This is the Smallmouth Crush podcast. If you're a hardcore angler, you've come to the right place. This is a weekly podcast that will interview some of the top smallmouth bass anglers in North America. Travis and his guest will discuss what it takes to consistently catch big smallmouth, and you'll get a glimpse inside the mind of a trophy smallmouth angler. And now, here's your host of the Smallmouth Crush podcast, Travis Manson.
Hello, welcome to the Smallmouth Crush podcast. My name is Travis Manson. Another great week talking smallmouth bass. Digging it. Can't get enough. A lot of good information here on this podcast. We're talking with the top smallmouth bass anglers in North America for season 1. And what a journey. We talked to some amazing anglers. Anglers that just really know how to stay dialed in when it comes to smallmouth fishing. And today's guest is no different. We're going to definitely be bringing him in just a moment. But before we go there, let's talk a little bit about, of course, the Reel Shot. The Reel Shot carries all the most wanted bass tackle that a Smallmouth Crush fan could ask for. Top brands like Mega Bass, Jackal, Evergreen, Z-Man, Daiwa, Shimano, Dirty Jigs, Omega Custom Tackle, Kitex, St. Croix rods, and much, much more. Of course, they have the staples like Berkeley, Rapala, Z-Man. We say Z-Man. They got it all. Go check it out. Same day shipping. We'll make sure you get your tackle for your next big tournament or big bass adventure. If you head on over there, use my code SmallmouthCrush15. We're going to give you 15% off your first order. So that is a cool deal, and we really appreciate the Reel Shot for this opportunity. Heath Wagner is going to be joining us. In fact, let's just bring him in. Let's get this podcast / YouTube video going. How are you today, Heath?
Doing great, Travis. How are you?
Good, man. Super excited to talk to you. You know how to put a few smallmouth in the boat, and I really want to get inside your head, especially when it comes to tournament fishing, as well as anything else you'd love to share with us, Heath. But before we go there, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself, where you're from, kind of how you got into fishing, and really kind of what your future plans are when it comes to smallmouth fishing?
I've been fishing since basically almost before I can remember. My grandmother got me addicted to it at a young age, and I started tournament fishing. I think I fished my first tournament when I was 14 years old.
Wow.
And that was on Lake Tippecanoe. It was a tournament. I was fortunate. I caught big bass. It was like a 6'11" largemouth in that tournament. So I thought tournament fishing was easy.
Yeah.
One fish and a couple other ones landed us in like 17th out of 100 boats. Got big bass. I thought, man, this is easy. There ain't nothing to do this. And then I found out it wasn't so easy.
Sure.
But I'm 46 now. Right around when I was 20, I made my first trip to Lake Erie. The Bass Islands at the time were different than they are today, and ended up throwing a old sinking Rebel, and just caught the fire out of all these smallmouth on Kelly's Island. And I knew right then and there that I was not going to stop traveling to the Great Lakes, northern Michigan, and chasing those mean brown things that were attacking jerkbait that day. So I've been chasing smallmouth on Lake Erie for basically 26, 27 years now. Not just Lake Erie. Anywhere I can find a big old brown one, I'll almost travel to it if I get the opportunity. So I started fishing Michigan Division BFLs. I'm I guess what you would call a BFL veteran. I've been doing it for, I think this will be my 16th or 17th season. I can't remember, but I have not missed a BFL.
Really?
15 years in the Michigan Division, because it's basically just a smallmouth beatdown for the most part.
Yeah.
Clair, Detroit River, every once in a while, Burton Mullet up north, and a little bit over on the west side of the state, which are more largemouth fisheries, but they're mixed. But yep, that's my history. I've been chasing those things for quite a long time.
Sounds like it. So what, 16 years you said?
16 years in the Michigan Division of the BFL. Yep.
All right, I got to ask, how, I don't want to put you on the spot because I'm not sure about your track record. I know you catch them, but how many wins do you have?
I have 6.
6? Wow.
Yep, and there's a stat to that I'm almost as proud of as my 6 wins. I've had 11 co-anglers win in the back of my boat in 15 years.
So cool.
I've not only been on them a few times, I've had a few co-anglers I've put on them a few times. I've been proud of that stat. Only one time of all those times have both me and my co-angler won at the same time.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I've had a few wins in the old Bass Cat.
So the BFLs, I mean, it's awesome. I've fished them in the past. I know a lot of the viewers are familiar with the setup. Obviously, there's probably some lakes that you prefer, Lake Erie being one of them on the schedule. Do you have some Angler of the Year wins on that as well?
I have one AOY. I've in my 16 years, I've only missed the top 10 twice, and one time I finished 20th. One time, my first year, I finished 20th, and one year everything went wrong, and I finished 24th. So
sure,
I made the regionals, but every other year, like last year, I finished third. I've had several thirds. Third is seems to be a place I like to rest, but
sure.
that's my style. If I think I can win, I'll bypass 18 pounds to go try to win. So that it makes it very difficult to win AOY, but I have done it once. So.
Sure. As far as 6 wins, what's your most memorable win? On the BFL side.
A few years ago, I drew co-angler Tony Mitchell, and it was I guess it's only been 3 years ago. Tony Mitchell, I guess all of them are memorable, but the one on Lake St. Clair, I weighed in a super sack, an incredible super sack. I'll never forget that day. I'll never forget the number of 4.5 to 5 pound smallmouths I caught that day. I just remember one time telling Tony in the back of my boat, I counted. I caught 20 in a row, and the smallest was 453. The biggest was 521, and none of them helped. I didn't put any of those fish in the live well. So it was a pretty insane day. I ended up weighing 28 pounds and 15 ounces, which is, from what we can tell, the largest sack ever weighed in FLW history for smallmouth, which
sure.
Guys were mentioning it on stage. I actually left those fish 2 hours early. I lost one fish all day. It was about a 6.5 or something at the boat that would have put me over the 30-pound mark. Had I known that I was that close to 30, I might have stayed another hour or so. They were still chewing.
Man,
it just got better throughout the day.
Walk me through leading up to that event. Did you have a feeling you were on the right deal? What were you thinking going, leaving takeoff in the morning? Where was your mind?
I knew in the morning that 20 pounds wasn't going to cut it that day. Might not even get you a check. It was shortly after, I don't remember, I think it was the FLW tour was there, and there was a school of fish, a special school of fish this is post-spawn smallmouth. So to have that many 6-pounders roaming around in a school was insane. And I've chased schools on Lake St. Clair for a long time. I've never seen one with that many 6-pounders in it. And I happened, a good friend of mine named Derek Sawyer. He lives in near Windsor, actually Bell River. If anybody's familiar with Bell River Hump, he lives there. He's always out there, and he said, "Hey, this was the location of the school when the tour was here." And I believe Chad Grigsby weighed in a 27-pound sack. So I know that quality was in the area. But what happens was everyone chased those guys. They knew where those two little sweet spots were. And of course, I went and checked them in practice. And this was a good 2 weeks later, which is unusual for smallmouths to still be sitting on Lake St. Clair. I call it the seek, kill, destroy thing. They come in there, they destroy everything in their path, and they move on.
Okay.
And that's what they do on Lake St. Clair. And I checked both these places, and the fish are still there. They're still fighting. I could literally, as 19 feet of water, I could look over the side of the boat on a calm, sunny day, and I could look down and see those fish sitting on their little places that they were sitting on and still set up. The problem was there was another 50 boats that knew where those fish were. So my strategy is always in a school is to figure out which direction they're heading, before they implode. And you hope they don't implode before tournament comes around, but that's a school on Lake St. Clair is a 1 mile by 1 mile school. It's always 1 mile by 1 mile. That's just how big a school that is. And then you got to find the little sweet spots in between there where the big ones like to set up. I call them oases.
Mm-hmm.
You usually see them visually. Different areas of the lake have a different thing that'll hold those bigger fish. And what I do in practice is I circle those key spots. And the day before the tournament, I found a couple of very large schools no one was messing with, but they weren't quite the right fish. They were 21 pounds was sitting there, and that sounds great for most lakes. This is not the type of school that was swimming around over there. This was, you better have 5-pounders or you're not going to win. And my buddy Ryan said was guiding that day on Friday, and we were talking back and forth, and he says, well, I caught a couple of big ones in this area, but no concentration. So literally, that tournament morning, I headed across the lake with all those spots in my back pocket, and I dropped down between a couple of waypoints Ryan gave me, and I was now a mile and a half from where Chad Grigsby had caught him.
Okay, yeah.
And there was 30 boats over where Chad was fishing. There was 30 boats where Dylan Hayes and I don't remember who else was over there that day. They were fishing, and those guys, you could hear them arguing, and I was sitting there all by myself. I was trolling across the flat, and like I said, 19 feet, but it was calm and sunny. You can see bottom. And I'm looking down at the bottom. I'm visually staring at the bottom, and in this 30 minutes, as I'm just flinging around, I catch 20 pounds in the first 30 minutes just flinging around. There's just that many fish there. And I told my partner, I remember turning around looking at Tony Mitchell, and I go, there's one right there. I says, I'm going to mark it. And I had not caught a fish off of it yet. And they're just little charcoal-colored shell beds, basically. And Scott Dobson and I have talked about it, and we think that the bottom is cleaned in the winter by ice and current and everything, and there's these real goofy-looking places that the big ones will gang up on. And I told Tony Mitchell, I said, there's one right there. And I trolled about 200 yards, and I go, oh, there's another one. Now, I had not caught a fish off at either one of those spots, but they looked right. I said, those are right. So I'm just basically trolling around, watching for fish, and I'm catching, and we're both catching fish in the meantime. And about 9 a.m., I swung back around, and we both culled to about 21 pounds. And I says, I got to go back and check those spots out. And at 9 a.m., from 9 a.m. till I left, I got back to that spot. I hit spot lock, and I said, Tony, it's right there. And that's when I caught my first 6-pounder. And I started catching fives, and I would catch 5 to 12 in a row till the school kind of broke up, and they'd chase each other in. And then I just trolled to the other one, and I'd catch 5 to 12 in a row. Like I said, one time I had 20 in a row, and if you left them alone for 10 minutes, they'd all wad back up on the little spot, and I just turn around and go back and forth. And I just remember my Rapalas saying they went to 24. My scale said 24 pounds, 25 pounds, 26 pounds, 27 pounds. And I was looking at my Rapalas going, Tony, I'm just going to beam them from now on. I'm not weighing any more of these fish. I'm not even going to look. And I had 3 fish over 6 pounds in the live well, but they were just over 6 pounds. And then I had the 5 somethings. And I remember that I made a cast at like 10 after 1. One of the competitors had finally come over close to me, and I was trying to pull him off because I had a tournament the next day. And I hook a fish at like 5 or 10 after 1. I weighed in at 3 or 3:30, get it to the boat, and Tony Mitchell goes, Heath, that one's over 6 too. And it pulled off right when he went to net it. And I go, I kind of laughed about it, because if anybody was going to beat me on that particular day, it would have been an incredible feat. I knew what was in the live well. I just didn't realize there was basically 29 pounds in the live well. I land that fish, and I got over 30 pounds, but we ended up leaving. Tony, my co-angler, I think my biggest fish that day was a 6'3". His was a 6'4". He had like 24 pounds, I want to say, that day. And I was actually telling him throughout the day, every time I'd hook a fish, throw at my fish, because there'd be 20 with it. Double up, and couple of fun fishermen were running by, and they seen us and they came in. They were from South Carolina or somewhere, and they actually heard me telling them to throw at my fish, and they started throwing at me. And one of the guys in that boat caught a 741 on his Rapalas off of one of my fish that I was reeling in. So I told him, I said, hey, man, that particular day, that was the biggest draw of boats in that BFL in years. We had like 150, 160 boats.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like that particular one, because the lake was on, obviously, at the time, and everybody wanted to get in on that. And, I told the guys, I was like, hey, man, I said, I need every one of these fish I can catch. We were nice about it. But like I said, Tony and I ended up both getting big bass. We both won. So we could have done no more than we did that day. But flirting with the dirty 30, really, I mean, our weights combined, we figured it up. We had if we would have been in a team tournament, we had 30.6 pounds or something like that today, which
right.
I've fished Lake St. Clair and Lake Erie a long time. To do that in I believe that was a July tournament was just crazy. And these fish were pigged out on craws and perch, and they were eating everything in the area. But anyway, that's probably my most memorable, but they're all memorable.
Wow.
I can detail every single win I've ever had out there. So.
Yeah, sounds like it. So the I guess a technique of choice that day for you, what were you using, or was it a multiple array of baits?
I caught every single fish I weighed. I don't know if I threw another bait. I had 3 drop shot rods on my deck, and I caught every single fish on a drop shot with a TRD on it, Z-Man TRD, and I had it was the Gobi colored one, and basically green pumpkin, purple, and gold. That. And I just was nose hooking it on there, and I got down to where I only had one bag of 3 left, and I kept telling Tony, it's not the color, it's not the color. And Tony says, well, why am I catching 4-pounders and you're catching 6-pounders? I said, I don't know, try one. And he, of course, he catches his 6.4 on it. He goes, it is color. He goes, but I don't want to use them up on you. So anyways, that particular day, you know how smallmouth are, that particular day, that's what they wanted. So.
Now, do you think the these darker spots or these irregularities in 19 feet of water, if it wasn't calm, would you have been able to see those still, or maybe without sun?
Without sun, you can still see them when you're directly on top of them. Now, you can't. Some of the biggest schools. I don't know if you've ever been on St. Clair, Travis, but there's a popular area called the Metro Flat. And the Metro Flat is basically featureless. You can rarely see bottom on the Metro Flat in 18 feet of water. For some reason, that side you can't. The Canadian side you can. The fish that I caught that day were on the Canadian side. And it's just, I call it the checkerboard bottom. It's sand, perch grass, sand, perch grass, sand, perch grass. Not heavy weeds. Wide open, clean bottom. If you get a little cabbage mixed in, that's even better. Small clumps of cabbage, that's awesome. You will catch some fish off of that. But when you see that sand, perch grass, all of a sudden you'll see this little patch of sand that's dark, and it's charcoal colored. I call it charcoal. And if you get a real good eye on it, when you get on top of it, you can see the bottom looks like it's tore up. And you'll see some mussels and shells shining in it, and it happens every year. I would give those waypoints where I caught that 29-pound bag to anyone. You will never catch another 29-pound bag off those spots, because what happens is they fill up with weeds. You go back in August, and all of a sudden you got all these junk weeds full in these things. It's just a timing thing, and it happens at a certain time of year. And it's when those schools are grouped up, and if you can find, I've won off of spots like that 3 different times in different tournaments on St. Clair.
Are you able to graph those fish and see them as well if you were just idling, or not so much?
You can see them on SI. The schools are so big, you can both see them on 2D. You can see them on SI. You'll see the little white marks on the SI when you get your SI tuned in just right. You can definitely see those schools. Live scope, and the addition of live scope and forward facing sonar has obviously, everyone's been watching. They've seen what happened in Clair. That has changed the game. You can you can go out there now and you SI them. So now I idle till I SI them. I'm looking for a clean bottom, not a lot of weeds, a little bit of weed, and then you'll see those fish just clustered or in movement because those schools, the schools on St. Clair are the biggest schools of smallmouth I've seen anywhere in the country. Anywhere I've ever been, I've never seen such big schools. And you'll see them on that SI, and then you drop now with live scope. Now you drop down. Now you get to specifically target them. You get to see if they're smallmouth with forward-facing sonar. Because if you watch it long, and I've been doing it for 2 years, and you can tell it's a smallmouth. Mm-hmm. They move differently than other fish. You can see when a sheephead's coming across, how he sachets, his laziness. If you I like to sight fish. I'm a sight fisherman. Done it for that. I can never. I chase the spawn all over the country, and I like to watch fish. So watching to see what a sheephead moves like, what a walleye moves like, what a smallmouth moves like. If you visually watch those fish, obviously when you're watching forward-facing sonar, you can see the same thing on there. So yes, you can see it with your electronics. You can see them with SI. You can see them on 2D, and the forward-facing sonar just completes the puzzle. So yes. Mm-hmm. I do find them with mostly with SI.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of time idling around looking for these big schools that are out there. If you find a school, are you confident? Let's say it's someone that's just going out there that wants to, have a little bit of fun. They can only get out there on the weekends. Is that school still there the following week, or do they move that quick?
It's to me, from what I've seen for the years I've been fishing it, it's about a 7 to 10 day cycle. So your buddy just went out there on Saturday, and the next Saturday he's sending his buddies out there. Those waypoints you might give them are only reference points. Mm-hmm. Basically, 99.5% of the waypoints I have on Lake St. Clair are junk after a week. There is a point every year where that school just explodes, and now we're scattered. Now we're no longer in this post-spawn, let's feed, let's eat everything we can find, and they just scatter and they become harder to find. But no, it's about a 6-week period, and mm-hmm. all you have to do is find which way they're moving. They're only moving to food. They're a smallmouth, they're all fat, and they're healthy. They're just... I honestly think they move across a flat, and if you're a crawdad, you're in trouble. They're gonna. Mm-hmm. St. Clair still has a great population of smallmouths, crawdads, unlike mm-hmm. Erie, and they'll move across those flats and just destroy everything, and then they keep moving. They're not gonna mm-hmm. sit there if they ain't got anything to eat. So if that's in my mind, that's what they're doing.
Right.
See and destroy, and then off they go. Off they go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and then they just scatter. So, and I think they always head to current. So once that's over, I think they head to current and they start to set up on current spots. But that's me.
Yeah. No, that's a great approach, mindset when it comes to it. What do you prefer, Lake Erie or Lake St. Clair, or does it kind of depend on the year?
Believe it or not, after all that about St. Clair, I'm an Erie guy.
Are you?
I'm an Erie and I'm a Detroit River guy. I like my river. The St. Clair River is real popular. If I had one place on earth to fish, I love the Detroit River. And I love Erie and the Detroit River because I like rocks don't move. Gravel patches don't move.
Mm-hmm.
All those fish on St. Clair do is move nonstop. So every time you fish Lake St. Clair, you got to find them and figure it out every single time. You have to do the same thing on Erie, but when you find them, they are so specific. And don't get me wrong, St. Clair, when you find those fish, they're specific for a week.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
On Erie, I like to pull up. The places that I've been on Erie, I'm a North Shore guy. got some experience with the Bass Islands. I'm very experienced in Michigan water. Not a lot of guys are. Everything is so specific. When I pull up on Erie, my waypoint is where I need to set to cast and make the angles and things like that. St. Clair, you might run out to your little sweet spot. Like I said, the day I caught 29 pounds, I found those 2 spots that day.
Mm-hmm.
On Erie, that doesn't typically happen. Erie is all about graphing, and you have to work. And once you find something, it may not be good every year, but it will eventually be good again. You may not be having a good spot for 10 years, but then all of a sudden, wow, they're here again. Awesome. And I got a few, the Detroit River, with the heavy current, spots typically are good year after year after year after year. Mm-hmm. Size changes a little bit every year. The cycle of the smallmouth size and stuff changes. But I love the Detroit River because there is nowhere on earth that I've ever been for smallmouth where you can set on spot lock and fish 5 different spots that day, and all 5 spots have the potential of producing 100 fish without ever moving the boat, sitting on spot lock. St. Clair is not like that. You got to move around a little bit, and there's a lot of sweet spots where on the Detroit River, Lake Erie, they're here right now, and we're going to crush them right here, and we're not even going to have to move. And I like the structure of Erie. I've always preferred it. Most of the guys I fished against over the years will tell you the same thing. They like the, even though in a BFL, if there's 130 boats, 100 of them go north and head to St. Clair out of the Detroit River. There's guys like me and Mike Tromley, that Erie holds a special place in our heart, and it's where we love. St. Clair's awesome, got big fish in it. It has surpassed Erie. It used to be a 3-year cycle. St. Clair would be good for the better lake for 3 years, and then Erie would be the better lake. St. Clair has just dominated Erie for a few years. Even though there's winds still coming off at Erie, it's when St. Clair's in a little bit of a slump or the fish aren't biting. But when the big fish are biting on Lake St. Clair, and if the big fish are biting on Erie, you better be on St. Clair because your big giant bag potential I'm talking 25 still on Erie. We're talking 27 plus. They live there. They live on St. Clair.
Gotcha. Your love for the Detroit River. I have a couple questions when it comes to fishing that or any type of, I guess, river system. Are you targeting fish in the main current? Are you looking for fish that are trying to hide from the current, or is it actually both? Do they live in that main current as well as, I guess, current breaks, or is it kind of a combination?
It cycles depending on the season. The colder the water, they still relate to the current. However, they don't relate to direct current. They relate to what I call lesser current areas. If you cast when the water's below 50, if you cast your bait out and the current's moving it for you, that's too much. But if you move your bait and you can obviously see the current. I'm saying 90% of the time I got a 3/8 ounce sinker on something, whether it be a tube or, I'll go heavier if the current justifies it. But below 50, off current areas, and there will be a lot of fish. I catch smallmouths in the Detroit River from ice out till I've been there over Christmas break and caught it in the Detroit River. But it's always off current. So as it gets warmer, it's more direct current. Okay. And one of the secrets, the Detroit River is you have got to break it down. It's got many channels and everything, and you have to break it down into, okay, I'm going to just fish this channel or that channel or that channel. And those fish, the amount of fish that will sit on any particular spot is mind-boggling sometimes. How many? I remember a day with Mike Levinsky and my father-in-law were out there, and it was nasty. And we just sat on one spot. It was nasty out. And we quit counting at over 220 fish put in the boat. And we never the boat. We just kept casting and kept catching them, and never caught a 5-pounder all day.
Huh. Yeah.
So
Well, you mentioned you love sight fishing. Does that play in the river as well? Are you able to visually see some of these fish cruising, or is it a lot deeper?
Early, like, I mean, when we get sometimes, yeah, I caught fish off beds and BFLs in the river. I have caught. There are a few areas where you can visually see fish and catch them. I know the trick that I learned from Sturgeon Bay, the little hair jig. It does play a role in the river. You catch them on Cincos, topwater. Topwater is awesome in the Detroit River sometimes, but yet rarely. But occasionally, yes, I do put a few sight fish in the boat. And if we have a late spawn, no matter what, the first BFL, there will be fish on beds in the Detroit River. I don't care how warm it's been that spring. There will be fish left over on beds, and I usually utilize a couple of them when that comes. And like I said, I chase the spawn across the country. I'll chase the spawn up to St. Clair in the first BFL just so I can sight fish, because certain areas of Lake St. Clair are colder than other areas, and obviously that's river influenced by a Lake Huron that's dumping cold water into Lake St. Clair.
Right.
Oh yes.
Man.
Yes, I do sight fish a few, even all the way any time of year you might, but most of the time I'm fishing deeper than 7 feet out to 20, even out to 30 feet of water sometimes in the Detroit River. These fish.
Wow. I always, I've been on the Detroit River a few times. I kind of want to compare it to the St. Lawrence River. Have you fished the St. Lawrence? I assume you have.
I have not, believe it or not.
Okay.
And, Scott Dobson's always given him, you need to come over and fish the St. Lawrence. You'd love it. I says, yeah, I know I would, but I spent a lot of time on the water and I spent a lot of time traveling, but I don't know. I don't know why I haven't been there. I have caught a smallmouth on every Great Lake, including Superior, except Lake Ontario. So I'm 4 for 5. I have not completed my Great Lake slam on smallmouth yet.
Right. So, how does the St. Clair River differ from the Detroit River, or do they fish very similar?
No, they fish different. So the St. Clair River has a lighter colored bottom, so you can see down. It's more weedy. It's the fish. St. Clair River, that you catch a lot of big shallow fish and you catch a lot of deep shallow fish. And I have never been able to spot lock in the St. Clair River when it comes to, the deepest smallmouth I ever caught came out of 74 feet of water out of the St. Clair River. And they set up in areas on the St. Clair River, and they do set up on stuff, but they're so scattered around. They're set up on specific stuff, but there's so much specific stuff they set up on, where the Detroit River, they are set up right here. You make this cast and you will catch that fish. I do not like fishing deep in the St. Clair River. That's like watching the grass grow. It's still fishing, but you're slipping current. And I know that's popular on the St. Lawrence River. I've talked to Chad Pipkins. He's a good friend of mine. He's done it several times where he slipped the current on the St. Lawrence and caught him deep real good that way. That's how the St. Clair River fishes too when they go deep. However, there's always a shallow population of smallmouth in the St. Clair River. And these are fish you can see, because you can see out to about 10 feet and then the bottom falls out into the channel. But it's clear most of the time. But it's totally different than fishing the Detroit River, no doubt about it. And it doesn't have as many. The Detroit River is full of spots, specific spots. When I say full of, I'm talking, I probably have over 100 in my graph I might visit in a practice day. And there's just a lot of them. Where the St. Clair River, if you get up in there and you know where the fish like to set, everyone knows where those fish like to set, and it's pretty obvious. And like I said, you can see them. You can Google Earth it and see them. So
right.
So yeah, it's different. Where you can't do that same thing on the Detroit River. The Detroit River is all figured out with mapping and understanding what the fish do in the Detroit River. So
sounds like a lot of work.
Smallmouth are a lot of work. That's why we love them.
Yeah, that's so true. The St. Clair River, and you kind of brought up a good point. I think the color of that water is one of the most amazing places to fish for smallmouth, just as far as the beauty of the water and being able to look down and see some of these, I guess I want to say areas where maybe the ice shelves have come through, and it's almost like the Caribbean in some places.
It is beautiful. Yep.
It's crazy. We don't even see that as much even on the St. Lawrence River, which is obviously a gorgeous place to fish. So it's truly unique. Do you ever mess around with kind of getting away from the crowd when you fish tournaments? Do you ever start venturing into the mouth of Huron and maybe kind of, I guess I would say, past some of the boundaries where most people would fish and kind of look for that opportunity, or do you kind of just stick to what you know?
Nope, I'm known for that. I have never won any of my tournaments on Lake Huron, but I have ventured a long ways out into Lake Huron and had success doing it, but never to the point where I've ran there on tournament day. But I love adventure. I like new places. I always take a day of practice. If I practice 2 or 3 days for a BFL, one of those days will be a no waypoint day. I will take all the waypoints out of my graph. I'm not allowed to look, and I'll go to areas that I've never been. And I've won. I told you I won 6 BFLs. 3 of them were Lake Erie BFLs that I won. 3 of them were Lake St. Clair BFLs. So I'm the guy that will go anywhere to do anything, and I like to do things a little bit different. I don't like to see boats if I can help it. I don't like to do community holes if I can help it. I'm not saying I won't. I'm not opposed to it. I do it if I have to. But if I can stay away from the crowd, my wins on Erie that I've had in the past, not just BFLs. I've won the Wonderland tournament before and a few other of the big ones. I've never seen a bass boat. I won't see a bass boat all day. One of the BFLs I won, I remember you could only see down 8 inches in Lake Erie. It was muddier than could be, and I weighed in a big bag, went back the next day, and we won my father-in-law and I won. It's a Wonderland Open, used to be a big open tournament they had out there. We won that. We had that tournament won in 5 casts. It was over. We pulled up that spot in that muddy water and made 5 casts with a crankbait between the 2 of us. It was and I looked at him and I said, "We just caught 25 pounds in 5 casts. How'd you like that?"
Wow.
I mean, and I never seen a boat that day. No one. I like obscure and something a little different. And I mean, they had a federation tournament on Lake Erie one time, when it used to be 8 states, and I led that for dead fish. Cost me the win on the last day. I led it 2 out of the 3 days. Ended up finishing second, and it was a late August tournament. The water was as hot as it could be, and I caught every single one of my smallmouths. And when I say I caught the last 2 days, we put upwards of 80 to 100 keepers in the boat both days. But my co-angler from South Dakota the one day was at 75, and he was having trouble counting. And we did not catch a smallmouth that day in late August deeper than 4 feet of water. Most of them came out of 2 feet of water. It's just a couple of little weird things that I do that a smallmouth is a visual feeder. And if you take his vision away from him, what does he have to do? He does the same thing a largemouth does. When a largemouth, either the sun comes up or it gets dirty, he's going to move right next to that log and get as tight as he can. The beauty of Lake Erie is, to me, when the water gets dirty or it algae blooms real hard or anything like that, those fish will pack together as tight as they can get. And when it's happening and it's muddy, I never see a boat. And I can't tell you how much money I've won in nasty, dirty, ugly water.
Dang.
Erie on, I have places that I literally, if the wind is right, if everything comes together right and I see something muddy up, I'm like, oh, they might be there. Let's go check.
Yeah. Well,
And
I don't expect you to give us the area, but can you tell us the baits that you're throwing when those conditions happen? Is it still, say, a tube or a drop shot, or are you using some type of reaction bait?
so most of the time, it's a 6XD, 5XD crankbait in water deeper than 10 feet. I like a 2.5. Although the tournament I mentioned, where the Federation tournament, a lot of those fish came on a 2.5. We were banging off of rocks with a 2.5. And those fish, like I said, were very specific. Only fished 3 spots, and we'd spot lock on each one. And then I do a follow up. I've told a lot of guys that, like the Wonderland tournament, we pulled up a setup. We both had a 5XD green gizzard 5XD tied on. And I told my father-in-law, I said, I'm going to cast my 5XD out there. Make sure your 5XD lands within 5 feet of mine, and we'll both start cranking at the same time. And I told him this. We hadn't made a cast yet. I says, I'll net them both. I got the net. I'll net them both. So we both started cranking, and we both immediately, 3 cranks in, hooked 2 fish over 5 pounds. I net mine, I net his, and we got 2 5-pounders in the live. Well, what I do, I have this thing I do on these spots. There's so many fish on them, and you know how smallmouth like to chase each other out. Even in the muddy water, they're there. You just can't see them. I always dangle a tube over the side of the rail, and I had one dangled for him. And the minute I netted my crankbait fish, I tripped the bail on my spinning rod. I netted his fish. I tripped the bail on his spinning rod.
Yep.
Ran back up, closed the bail, set the hook, handed him the rod, said, reel this one in. I set the hook on his, reeled that one in. I couldn't get those 2 fish out of the net because they're tied up in crankbaits, and I netted those 2 fish, and we literally had 4 or 5-pounders in the net that morning.
Wow.
That's what I do. And what we catch, I catch them cranking mostly when it's like that, but I still catch them.
Yeah.
On a tube, a Ned rig, and a drop shot. You know, when those fish slow down or you kind of pull them out, you break the school up a little bit, then I'll slow down a little bit and fish those specific spots. And they'll still bite that stuff. But yeah, my number one bait of choice is a crankbait when it's like that.
Yeah.
When
you're targeting those fish that are chasing your hooked fish up to the boat, and you're using that technique, are you free spooling that all the way down to the bottom, or are you just letting it free spool and hit the bottom and just hopefully one picks it up while you're dealing with the fish in the boat?
Usually, I've had this happen so many times, especially on those little areas. I got a 3/8 ounce. Usually I got a 3/8 ounce tube, sometimes a half. And I put the rod tip right on the edge of the rail so that the tube will fall straight down and nothing restricts the line from it falling. And a lot of times I trip the bail right after I'll net a fish. You'll see the line take off within. It'll never hit the bottom. It'll only go about 3 feet and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's all you can do to grab your rod before he spools you to grab it and set the hook on it.
Sure.
But I can't, it's to run across those schools seems rare, but we run across a school like that at least once a year, sometimes twice out there on. And, with live scope, it has really opened my eyes now with forward-facing sonar. Now I actually get to look and see how many fish are in these schools. And I fish a lot around home, and I'm used to seeing bluegill schools. And some of the schools I've seen on Erie, I call them bluegill schools or crappie schools because they're just these massive schools of smallmouth that just sometimes they blow my mind. 2 years ago in the Super Tournament of the BFL, I pulled up, I scanned. This was a 80-yard wide spot, and I scanned it with my sonar and showed my co-angler. I said, look how many are here. I said, that looks like bluegills. Those are all smallmouth. And we caught it, both of us. We started that tournament. I'd say we made our first cast at 20 after 7. We did not go without a fish hooked, both me and my co-angler, until 10:30. That's how many fish are sitting on one little spot. That's a 6D and a drop shot, and And then at 10:30, a light switch flipped, and I scanned the area, and they were gone. I don't know. There had to be 2,000 smallmouth sitting in one little spot.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It's incredible what happens out there. And the stories sometimes sound crazy, but the nice thing about a BFL is you got a co-angler who gets to say,
they can back it up.
"You ain't kidding! Holy cow! There was 2,000 fish sitting there today."
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah,
man. Well, Heath, this was some really good stuff. We are approaching time here. Time flies when you're talking fishing stories. 2 questions I got to ask everybody who's on. I got to ask you. Got to ask yourself. First of all, what's your personal best smallmouth? And give us a little background behind that catch.
I have never broke the 7-pound mark.
What?
6 pounds and 15 ounces is the biggest smallmouth I ever caught. I caught him on Burt Lake. He was on a bed. I caught him on a jerkbait. And the funny thing about that whole fish is he's on my Facebook profile, big old black male. And I messed up in my notes in that BFL the next day, and that fish was spawning in 15 feet of water. I accidentally gave that fish to my co-angler. And he weighed him in, and he was 6 pounds and 15 ounces, and he was the exact same weight on my scales when I weighed him. But I have never caught a 7-pounder. Hooked a few. Never caught. I remember one fall in the Detroit River. I counted. I had 12 over 6 just that fall out of the Detroit River, but never a 7.
Yeah.
Once a 7, but he was a lake fish.
Sure. Awesome. If you had one bait, I have to say, so I'm going to go, Heath, this is the only bait you can throw all year long for smallmouth. What would that be?
No doubt about it, a swim bait. I would probably throw a Kitech. If I had my druthers, I'd have a Kitech 3.3 in my hand. Why? Because it catches fish when the water's 36 degrees, and it catches them when it's 80 degrees. There is something about it. I mean, I've caught so many small. I just know. I'd love to tell you Ned rig because it catches them year round, but I'd rather catch them on a swim bait. So to me, yeah, a 3.3 Kitech, no doubt about it. 3.3 on a spinning rod, slow reeling it on 6-pound test. That will catch fish. I fish with. I live close to Greg Mangus. Most people out there, anybody watching this knows who Greg Mangus is. I spend a lot of time in the boat with that man, and he has taught me that little 3.3 catches them no matter what the water temperature. It always catches them. So I learned a lot from him.
Let's take it one step further then. Color. If you can only have one color, Kitech 3.3. AYU. No doubt about it. Absolutely. That's my favorite. For anywhere that I've traveled in the country, it catches them. IU catches them. Wow. Although with Greg, we get real particular on color, and it's not IU, but most of the time, 90% of the time, it's IU. Sure. Wow. Heath, really good stuff. How can people, this got me excited. I want to come up to St. Clair in Erie, like now. How can people follow you on social media? And if, people that support you as far as fishing, if you want to talk a little bit about that before we wrap up.
Yep, I'm on Facebook, so find me on Facebook. I'll friend you. You got a picture of a fish and a few of your friends, I'll friend you on Facebook. I don't post near enough. My social media game has been lacking for the last few months. I do have a YouTube channel, Heath Wagner Fishing. I haven't made a video in 8 months. I promise I'll start making them again.
Sure.
I did some on Garmin Perspective and Live Scope and stuff like that were very popular. I also walleye fish. Those ones get popular. But yeah, check out my YouTube channel, Heath Wagner Fishing. You'll get to see a few walleye videos, few smallmouth videos, few up north smallmouth videos, which is my favorite place in the world is up north. So yeah, check me out on my YouTube channel. Check me out on Facebook.
Awesome. Good stuff. I really appreciate you giving some, I mean, seriously, these are some awesome fishing stories. 6 BFL wins. I'm sure you got another 6 in you in the future. So we're going to definitely be following you. And again, I want to thank everybody for listening as well. Thanks for Heath for coming on.
No problem.
And as always, until next time, we'll see you guys on the water.
Take it easy, guys.
Thanks so much for listening today. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show and follow us on Instagram at SmallmouthCrush. Also, the YouTube channel, SmallmouthCrush. And if you feel so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and comment with a review below. And as always, until next time, we'll see you on the water.